Welcome back to Sex Crimes Defense Podcast with Chance and Jay. Chance Oberstein is a defense attorney who handles sex crimes in California. I'm a media professional. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be legal advice. We were talking about Smokey Robinson. I don't know what to think. You know what I think that people think about this case is this is a real, like, what's going to happen? Where in the hell did this come from?
Right.
How can this be true? And when we read the lawsuit, if anybody bothers to read the lawsuit, I hope people do. Please do read lawsuits. In this case, reading the complaint lawsuit, one of the things that bothers me is that each Jane Doe, it is the exact same language. I mean, it sounds so scripted.
It's like a cookie cutter, right?
It's too cookie cutter.
Okay,
It's
but think
weird.
about this for a minute. I mean, the civil lawsuit, think about it in terms of your everyday experience. Okay, so say you're on the freeway and you're driving, and a police officer pulls over a car on the freeway. What's going through your mind? What are you thinking about? What's your first initial thoughts about what you see?
Oh, what did they do wrong?
Exactly. You're thinking, what did it? You've already come to the conclusion that someone has done something wrong. But that process of pulling them over is the same process of avering a civil complaint. Okay, this is what they did wrong. Okay, but it's the initial assessment, one-sided assessment. That's not how we're supposed to view these things. It's not in terms of what did they do wrong. Okay, we're supposed to presume they did nothing wrong unless we finally, ultimately, by assessing the facts and making some determinations, determine they did something wrong, right? Okay,
Yeah.
So what you're saying is in social media is kind of like driving on the freeway. You see something and all of a sudden you come to a conclusion, right?
And I'm going to say that I think people, whether it's Twitter or Instagram or TikTok or articles and news, tend to believe that if it is a news article or announcement, there's belief and reason behind that. Just like when somebody calls something fake news, we tend to just believe there must be a reason why that was said.
Yeah, the old smoking gun theory. But
So
the question arises then, because that's a tough thing to push back on, especially if you're a celebrity. And look at just the consequences of all this. It's devastating financially. But this is where things get blurry and kind of funky sometimes, because in general, I mean, you got to ask the question, how do you handle these things? In general, defending against sexual assault allegations warrants one to remain silent, as we've talked about before, and allow their defense attorney to create a viable defense strategy. However, when celebrities face allegations of sexual assault, their defense strategies often combine legal tactics with public relation maneuvers. And here are some of the most common approaches. And I'm just going to drop this on you, and you can stop me. We can, if you want to talk about it a little bit, but I think you'll recognize these immediately, like challenging credibility. Now, what do I mean by that? Defense attorneys may attempt to discredit the accuser by questioning their motives, their memory, or consistency. That's normal. But in some high-profile cases, this has included portraying accusers as opportunists or framing the allegations as attempts to gain fame or money. There's also the consent defense. A frequent legal argument is that the encounter was consensual. This can involve presenting messages, videos, or witness testimony to support the claim that both parties agreed to the interaction. Another way of doing it is mistaken identity or false allegations. Some defenses argue that the accused was not present or that the accuser had misidentified them. In other words, the defense may claim that the allegations are entirely fabricated. Then there's always the statute of limitations defense, and that is if the alleged incident occurred long enough ago, the defense might argue that the case should be dismissed because it falls outside the legal time frame for prosecution. But here's one that's interesting. Public image management. You never think about this, but celebrities often use carefully worded public statements or interviews to maintain their reputation. Some may deny the allegations outright, while others may express regret without admitting guilt. And then, of course, there's legal settlements. Probably the safest, sane thing to do is in civil cases, some celebrities choose to settle out of court to avoid prolonged public scrutiny, even if they deny wrongdoing. See, so these are common strategies. So can you tell me, from what I've just laid out for you, which strategy the Robinson team is using?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna counter your question with a question.
Okay.
Rather, okay.
Sure.
I'm gonna say this is that because here's what you made me think about. Because my mind, I can't hold all the legal strategy in my mind, which is why we have attorneys. We need that. And I also think that when we've identified when we talk, the average person could benefit from understanding civil versus criminal, legal arena, complaint, lawsuit. Well, we've all heard of lawsuits, but we don't really understand the minutia or even the sub minutia of legal procedure, arraignment, Miranda. We hear Miranda rights. We don't realize don't say anything. There's so much stuff we don't know. But I want to say this. So back to social commentary. I was talking about how what's believable and what's not. And I tell you, one of the things that bothers me in this complaint or story is that the wife Frances will come and like get you or put you in penalty if you don't do what I say. That doesn't really make sense. And I'll tell you, you know what really bothers me? If this is all about sexual assault, why is there so much information about pay and overtime and underpaid and overworked? Seems kind of weird. I don't get that either. Like seems to me like an attorney put a lot of thought into that, whereas like a housemaid is not thinking all that. And I want to add this final part. When you talk about consensuality, I get the feeling that maybe there was some sex with housemaids, but raped her 30 times? No, I don't believe that.
Okay, well,
so I don't know what the real complaint should be, but I think there's just a lot of bullshit in here.
Well, I mean, I think that it's pretty heavy, and
it's too heavy.
Here's the heavy cost of that. The heavy cost of that is that there's now a criminal investigation, and for all intents and purposes, the civil thing, of course, came first, and then came the criminal allegations. Once people started saying what they were saying. See, and that really blurs everything because statements are made, things are discussed, there's counter this and counter that. That can't go with a criminal investigation. It's just totally contrary to a person's, interest in terms of defending themselves in a criminal matter. So, these strategies can be controversial, and that's one of the controversial things about them, especially when they involve victim blaming or exploiting stereotypes. The legal system presumes innocence until proven guilty, but public opinion quickly forms, making these cases uniquely complex, as we've just illustrated. And that was this case. This was the Lido case, as opposed to the other cases that we've talked about in the past, which kind of formed up, and either you do the right thing or the wrong thing, either you speak or you don't. But here you've almost got the strategies of the civil allegations and the civil case at complete odds with criminal liability and what you should do under those circumstances. Would you not agree?
That's it. You see, I like the way you talk. You outline things in a really logical manner where I get hysterical and, because for example, when I read the Tyler Perry, I did I kind of put some information together and did a little podcast on that on the side. The Tyler Perry case is fascinating because it really sounds like sexual harassment. I mean, there's so many details and text messages and really weird stuff. Shannon Sharp, same thing. Lots of weird stuff. Very believable weird stuff. Justin Baldoni. Now, see, that one lacks weird details. I'm starting to think personally, and I think social media thinks that maybe Blake Lively needs to have a private conversation with her husband, and there's something going on, something weird on her part. And then Jared Leto, we looked at that. Even though there's weird details, they seem weird in themselves. So on the spectrum of weird and unbelievable, Smokey Robinson is as far to the weird and unbelievable side as we can get.
Right. It's kind of like the other side of the spectrum where you see this cookie cutting, like, the civil attorneys got the 4 women in the room and they all started, coming to a unification on certain things that all sound cookie cutterish. It's loaded, it looks like, to force a quick settlement out of court quietly, which kind of, blossomed into this when maybe the answer was no, hell no.
And I'm glad there's a $500 million countersuit. That's how you handle slander.
Well, yeah, it kind of lands like that, but the problem is that it's in the midst of now a criminal investigation, and that's not how you handle a criminal investigation.
But how are they going to come up with evidence? That's the thing. Is there a stain on a dress? I mean, do we have? This is one of I'm just going to say this. I know it's gross, but for this many, when you read the lawsuit, what they claim he did to them, and nobody saved any evidence or DNA.
Or there's all these explanations as to why they avoided the cameras and and this.
Oh
and
my
that.
gosh, I know that's actually in there too. That's weird. And he made sure they knew where the cameras were. That's just weird. That's
I'm
not
just
real.
saying.
That's not how real life works.
Well,
no.
I'm not taking a position on what's true or which not because I don't know. I just don't know.
Well,
but
I'm the
real
jury,
issue,
and I'm saying it's weird.
It kind of pushes out the question right here. Did he do it? And I'm not talking about did he. So
right, that's another. See, that is on the other side of the spectrum. We're seeing in the news. We're seeing pictures of BB oil and all this stuff. That one's believable. This one. I'm so glad that I can still listen to Tears of a Clown and not think the guy did something,
funky.
Yeah. Listen, at worst, okay, I'm just going to say it. At worst, he had sex outside of his marriage. I'm always assuming that if he did, she is too. They've been married forever. They're in this golden years of their life, and they, still feel a little sexy, but I'm willing to go out on the plank. I do not think he raped them. Sorry, Smokey. I'm sorry this hit the news. Well, please go enjoy your tour.
Yeah, I take no position because I don't know, but yes. I do bring out these things to illustrate that, just because someone avers something doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And that when we take it as true, we're really doing a disservice here to the person who's getting who's at the brunt of this, because we're coming to a lot of early conclusions that are based on allegations that are yet to be substantiated, and it's just, to me, just plain wrong.
Well, and over the next couple of years, people are going to keep an eye out for Smokey Robinson legal updates, and if he does come out clean, it's kind of like with Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp had to go through hell to come out, the kind of the clean winner, absolution, whatever. Since we view legal issues as a boxing match in this society. Right. And somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. And that's unfortunate. I think the whole Depp versus Heard situation, I think there was a lot of bad that happened, but he did actually win the case. So I hope Smokey wins this too.
Let's see. We'll see where that criminal investigation goes and whether or not any charges are filed. But at this point in time, this is where it stands. And
I'd be okay if maybe the women get a little bit of settlement. Something was going on in the blue bedroom. I'll say that.
Right. Who knows? Who knows?
Okay. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us again for another issue of Sex Crimes Defense Podcast. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks a lot, Jay. Appreciate that. Thank you.